Wild in the Streets from 1968. What would happen if teenagers actually voted, or if we had a president who wasn't like in their late 70s? Theme song.
Calhoun's Reviews! Calhoun's Reviews!
If you want to see Wild in the Streets, well, you'll have to buy it on Blu-ray or pirate it, because it doesn't look like it's streaming anywhere. So I first ran across this movie in grad school, watched it for a class, and I loved it. So I bought the novelization. Then a few years later, a DVD version, a combo version, the MGM Midnight Movies double feature of Wild in the Streets and Gas, not to be confused with which is a totally different movie, which has a similar thing. And then recently, I just got around to buying the Blu-ray. And a few years ago, I actually bought the soundtrack. So, needless to say, I like this movie. And I will say that if you do want to buy the movie, I just looked and it looks like the company that released this version, Olive Films, recently went out of business. So if you want to get a copy, I do it quickly before these go out of print and the price goes up, because who knows when another company is going to get the rights. So all that aside, what's it about? Well, it is in the 60s, and a politician played by Hal Holbrook is trying to cash in, trying to get the youth vote by promising to support lowering the voting age to 18, which actually didn't happen until the 26th Amendment in 71. So 3 years after this movie came out. And he enlists Max Frost, somebody who's in his early 20s. He says he's a head of all these businesses, so he's like a multimillionaire, and he's also a super popular musician. And so he goes to Max Frost, tries to get him to endorse him. So Max has a little concert, and he pulls a switcheroo and says, wait a minute, the guy who does my taxes is only 15. Why shouldn't he be allowed to vote? So he calls for lowering the voting age to 14.
Johnny Fergus, you want to level with us? You want to join our club, baby? Then you give us the vote at 14.
And calls for protests. So all across the country, we're told teenagers will protest and having sit-ins and generally scaring the old people.
Although the sleeping bag squatters still rest blissfully, the biggest block party in history is seemingly underway.
I won't say too much more about what happens, because I think it's really more powerful of a movie, more fun of a movie if you don't know where it's going. The movie is really kind of prescient, or does a good job of predicting things. Not only lowering the voting age, but also there are scenes very eerie, similar to the Kent State shootings, which happened in the 1970s. And watching it again, there were echoes of the January 6th riot. One thing that might not be expected is that there is actually a number of songs in it. And because Max, the character, is a musician, that's how he gets across most of his political things.
Youth power, that's where the whole thing's at now.
And the songs are actually pretty good. They go from a 60s pop one to one that is kind of darker and sort of reminded me of The Doors.
But nothing can change the shape of things to come.
Another unexpected thing is Richard Pryor is one of Max Frost's hangers-on, and it's kind of weird because it's not a comedic part at all.
Stanley X, 21, drummer, anthropologist, author of the Aborigine Cookbook.
And I went and looked in Richard Pryor's autobiography, and he said that he just did it because Shelley Winters asked him to be in it, and Shelley Winters plays Max Frost's mom, and her part is really great. I think she does a really good job of having sort of no pride, because her character comes off so poorly. It's really awesome.
Get ready!
The film's not perfect. There's some dated language about sexuality in it. But overall, I would say for 68, it's pretty progressive about homosexuality. The pacing's also weird. So a lot of it is about getting the laws changed and, lowering the voting age. And then, boom, all of a sudden, the last 20 minutes, they change tons of laws and all the society radically changes. So it's like the high point of that is like, 75% of the way through. They should have backed it up so we have some more, see some of the changes. The film's based on a short story that appeared in Esquire magazine. After watching the Blu-ray version, I went and looked it up, read it on archive.org. And it is remarkably similar. Perhaps it's not surprising that the guy who wrote the short story also wrote the screenplay. But it really is really similar, including mentioning some of the titles of songs that somebody, I don't know if it's a screenwriter or somebody else, went on to go and write. So maybe that reliance on the short story kind of hurt the pacing a little bit. But overall, like I said earlier, I love Wild in the Streets. I'm giving it 7 thumbs up. 14 or fight. But then they make it 15? That's just confusing.